I think speakers should not consider themselves speakers. They should consider themselves as problem solvers or solution providers. If you don't consider yourself a speaker, but that's somebody who's longer term with a client, you should be able to deliver your expertise in more than just that speech. So if you think about it that way, your value is not just that speech. Your value is in adding as much value as possible and not seeing it as a one-off relationship, but seeing it as a longer term relationship.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Value Whispering podcast. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, business coach, value whisperer, and advocate for introverted female entrepreneurs and experts who want to build a business that feels natural, authentic, and impactful. Over the summer here on the show, I've been hosting the Brilliant Business Book Festival, where I'm speaking to some of the authors of my favorite business books, those books that have helped shape my thinking and my business over the years, and those books that I wish I'd read sooner. Today's guest is Maria Franzoni, author of the Bookability Formula. As someone who's spent years inside the world of speaker bureaus, Maria has seen firsthand what makes certain speakers in demand while others struggle to get booked. Her book breaks down those insights into a clear, practical formula that any speaker can use to raise their profile, win more bookings, and turn their speaking into a real driver of business growth. I especially love Maria's approach because it shows that being bookable has got nothing to do with being a celebrity or being loud. It's more about relevance, resonance, and making yourself easy to work with, all very much in line with the value whispering approach to business growth. And as with every episode of the Brilliant Business Book Festival, if you go to melittacampbell.com/podcast, click on the show notes page for Maria's episode, you will find Valora, my AI twin, waiting inside to help you turn the wisdom from this show into practical actions you can already take in your business. And next Tuesday, I'm hosting something a little bit different that I would love for you to join, and that's a pod club. So like a book club, but for the podcast, because every episode is packed with so many insights. It's good to discuss those and to see how you can start applying some of these ideas to your business, to share your ideas with others and come up with new ideas. And sometimes I find the biggest ideas come between the episodes. One person says one thing, someone else says something else, and it sparks a third idea in your mind. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where that discussion takes us. It's the very first time I've done this. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go, but I would love for you to be part of that discussion. If you go to melittacampbell.com/club, that will take you to the Value Whispering Circle, my free community, and inside there you will find all the details and links for the pod club. So come along. There's no charge for that event, but I think it's going to be really insightful and really fun. Meantime, here's Maria. So hi Maria, it's wonderful to have you with us on the show today.
Hello, and you're looking beautiful in red, although on a podcast that's wasted, right?
It does go on YouTube as well.
Fantastic. Go on YouTube, have a look.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm really excited because we've spoken quite a bit on the show before about speaking, because for any business owner, getting on stages, being visible, speaking is really beneficial to the growth of your business, even more so if you can make that into an income stream. But then there's always that big question, well, how do you get on those stages? And how do you start to formalize that into a real business and become a speaker as the driver of your business rather than just a kind of like little thing on the side? So as someone who is very involved in speaker bureaus and booking speakers, I'm really excited to speak to you. And of course, we have the Bookability Formula, which is your breakdown of what are those elements that make you bookable. And I'm really looking forward to digging into that because you've made it so simple. And as you're going through, you're like, yeah, of course, but it's not the kind of things you're thinking about necessarily during that journey. So thank you for breaking it down for us. But I would love to know, before we get started, how did you get to become involved in speaker bureaus in the first place? What was that journey?
No, it was an absolute accident, really. I'm not young, so I'd been working for quite a few years before I got into the speaking industry, and I'd been in retail management, management consultancy, general management, educational travel, and I was looking for something different, something new. And I saw a very cryptic advertisement. In those days, we used to go through the newspapers to find jobs. We didn't really use LinkedIn. That's how old I am. And so I was looking in the newspaper, and there was a cryptic advert that said, if you are able to negotiate at senior level and not phased, this could be a really interesting a job for you, especially if you like to keep learning. And I thought, well, that sounds really curious. And of course, I'd never heard of speaker bureaus. So when I then went for the interview, and of course, I thought, well, yes, I can negotiate at senior level because I'd been a management consultant. I'd been telling CEOs and chairman of the board and directors, I've been telling them what they've been doing wrong with their business, a young woman standing up to people telling them what's wrong. And so I thought, yes, I can do this, not realizing that the negotiation would be between very senior people in business, in corporations, in government, and then their counterparts who would be the speakers, the experts, the academics, the adventurers, and very famous people that maybe I had admired, not realizing that's what it was. And as soon as I heard that that's what a speaker bureau was, it was about matching these incredible individuals with companies to help them for their conferences and events. I was in, I was hooked. And I've been hooked ever since. This industry is one of the most exciting places to be. I'm still enthusiastic about it. Can you believe that? So that's how it started. It was a total accident.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a very fortunate accident, and the way you describe it is really interesting as well. So you mentioned there that when you started, you didn't know what a speaker bureau was. For anyone else who's listening who also doesn't know what one is, you've kind of given a bit of a clue there. But what exactly is a speaker bureau, and what kind of speakers does a bureau represent?
Okay, so a speaker bureau is a fantastic resource for anybody who's organizing a conference or an event. And what they're doing, their clients are the conference organizers, event organizers, people in companies and organizations that are running meetings, events, and they need an expert or an entertainer, depending on what type of bureau it is, to come in and be part of that. And they're paying those people to come in and participate. And the bureau will have a roster of speakers, and some bureaus will have thousands of speakers. So it's quite a lot of people on that roster. And what their job is basically matchmaking the very right person, knowing who the right speaker is that will deliver on the objective of the client and that they will be in the right budget, and knowing how to get them to say yes to that client event. So if the client event isn't a good match, they wouldn't even be trying to match them. So that's what you were doing really. And bureaus work on commission. So to go into an answer to your other question, which was about when our speakers ready, they need to be earning a certain amount of money already for a bureau to take them on, because they're not going to take someone who's starting out, because a percentage, 20% of zero is not great. And so they want someone who's already earning four figures usually per speech and has some momentum. Most bureaus won't start someone off unless they've just done something incredible. So when Tim Peake came back from the space station, he hadn't been speaking and being paid to speak, but because he was in the news everywhere, everybody wanted to meet him and talk to him. It didn't matter that he didn't have lots of speaking experience and gigs already in his diary, because the demand was already there at four and five figures.
Mhm. Yeah, interesting. And you mentioned that, you know, a lot of the speaker bureaus are these really prominent people, celebrities. But what I found really interesting in your book was that when you broke down who are the people that get booked most often, it wasn't these people. It
I know.
was it was just, anyone could become the most bookable speaker. And at the Speaker Awards, again, we saw the Booker's Choice, and they were extraordinary people, of course, but they weren't like celebrities. Anyone can get to that position. So, what made you come up with this bookability formula in the first place?
I was actually reading Richard Koch's book, The 80-20 Principle, and I don't know if you've read it, but we all know that 20% of activities will deliver 80% of your output because we all know about Pareto. But
Mm.
what he did in his book is he said it's fractal. You can keep applying Pareto. You can apply 80-20 to 80-20. So it becomes 64-4. You can apply it again. So it becomes 51-1. I know the mathematicians will be writing in and saying, Maria, it's zero point 0.8 and not 1. So 1% of your activities could deliver 51% of your output. So I thought, I wonder if that's true about speakers. Do 1% of the speakers deliver 51% of the business? What I discovered was that 1% of the speakers delivered 80% of the bookings, which represented over 50% of the revenue. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. And so I then wanted to look at who were those people. And part of the motivation of understanding it, when you're on commission, if you can identify what makes a speaker bookable, you can help speakers be more bookable and therefore increase your commission. So it was a win-win for me to go into it and understand it.
Yeah. So when it comes to this bookability formula, is this something that only speakers who are connected to a bureau can apply, or can any speaker use this?
Anybody. I work with lots of speakers nowadays because I no longer have my bureau, and everything that we do is based on the bookability formula. I'm not necessarily taking them through element by element because not everybody likes maths or algorithms, but the fundamentals underneath it all are there. And we always start with the first most important point, which is to be relevant to a paying market. So no, anybody can apply. And somebody wrote to me actually recently and said that I'm not a speaker. And the reason I picked the book up is because I was an event organizer. So I was curious. I now have my own business. And she said, I can apply all of this to my business as well. It's not just about speaking. And she said, and I'm applying a lot of the tips and the tactics in my business. And she thanked me very much. And I do think it can be more general. But one of the things I say about making yourself bookable is to focus on a specific audience and on one thing. So I'm focusing on speakers. I'm following my own advice, Melita.
Yeah, but I totally agree with what she said. You know, what you just said there, one of your rules is to be relevant to a paying audience. And that's like the number one rule of business, but not many people start there. So,
It's the starting point, absolutely. And that's part of the problem as to why speakers aren't bookable, because they start with their passion without thinking, well, hang on a minute, how is that passion relevant to a paying market? What do I need to do with that? Or do I need to start again and rethink?
yeah, yeah. So tell us more about this bookability formula. There is four elements, if I remember.
It's actually six. There's four foundational elements. You're absolutely right. And then the six are one's a multiplier and one's a divider. So you can affect these four main elements. And the four main elements of bookability is one, to be relevant to a paying market, which we've already mentioned, starting point. Next is to be known for one thing and by the right people. Too many people think that they should be experts in lots and lots and lots, and but actually it's easier to be known for one thing than it is to be known for lots of different areas. Then the third one is to be memorable, which I often forget. Yeah, memorable. And that's memorable to the people who book you to the market, but also in speaking to the audience that your message is memorable so that they're still talking about it. And the last one is the one that's probably the most neglected and most taken for granted, and it has a huge impact, which is easy, which is easy to book, easy to work with, and easy to listen to. Do you want to go into the multiplier and divider at this point?
Yeah, let's
Shall
there,
we?
and then we can perhaps dive into one or two that,
Yeah.
as I say, all of this is so applicable to other things.
Fantastic. So if you add all of those four together, relevant, known, memorable, and easy, the multiplier is value, which I know you're going to be very pleased to hear that. Value in terms of speaking is the ROI, the return on investment, or the return on time, if you like, if you want to look at it that way, because people are taking time out to be in a conference, in an event to listen to you, time away from their work. The divider is something that all speakers need and we all need in business, but it needs to stay small. And it's a little e, and it needs to stay small. It's an ego. The ego must not get too big because if the ego gets too big, it can destroy everything above the line.
Mhm. Yeah, and we've all seen that happen.
Oh, yes. There are a few stories in the book.
So, oh, which one should we dive into? Let's go to be known for one thing, because I think that's quite controversial. because, as you say, lots of people say, well, I need to be known for everything. I can do so much. And one thing that I teach my clients, and I don't know if it's relevant here, if it's similar, is get known for one thing and then develop that relationship. And once you're known for that one thing, the door is open and you say, actually, I can help you with all of these things as well. And in going through that door and exploring different things with your clients, you may find there's a different thing that's even better you can get known for. And it opens out and then niches back down again. So that's the kind of way I see niching working, which this is all about. Is it the same with speakers, or is it just one thing and you stick with that?
It's the same in speaking, it's the same in business, it's the same in your work. Absolutely, totally, 100% agree with you. And those who weren't watching on video won't know that I was nodding away furiously all the way through and everything you're saying. Completely agree with you. For an example, if we think of a business example that we all know, and it's something that I shared at the conference when we met. If you think about Amazon, when Amazon started, they were known for selling books. But it wasn't the books that they then became known for. Just as you said, they became known for convenience, for speed of delivery, for making it actually so easy on one click to buy wherever you want. So then they expanded into other areas. And now I think I get 99% of my stuff, apart from groceries. And in fact, you could even get groceries now on Amazon because they got known for that convenience. But it started with books and then they niched into that. And now they're enormous because people will go to them because they are so convenient.
Yeah, it's in doing the action that you'd really start to see, well, what do people value most about my approach? And yeah, for them, it was the convenience. So I'd imagine that when you're working with speakers, that you get a bit of pushback on this, like, no, 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 I have so much more to give. Is there anything that you do or say that convinces those people that no, this is really the way to go?
Yeah, so what tends to happen when you work with a speaker, and they have lots of different ideas of what they want to be talking about, what you end up when you actually talk to them more and they tell you about their journey, what they've done, their speaking topics, what their formula is, or their methodology, and you understand a little bit deeper, there's usually one common theme that goes through everything. And then they realize, actually, it is one thing. It's just I've been breaking it down into different things, but there is an overall, I call it a red thread, you could call it an umbrella, but more often than not, there is actually one main theme. And then when they start thinking about it in that way, that all of the different things that they were talking about, actually, those will fit under, and this is the area that I'm most passionate about in that overall theme that I'm focusing on in these various different topics, then they're happy to reposition because it's like an aha moment. It's really hard for you as an individual to see that in the same way that when you work with people showing them value, people don't see it, but you can see it more quickly for them. Often an outsider can see things that you cannot see. And that's the value of bringing somebody else in to say, look, I need somebody else to look at this for me objectively.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And the term value whisperer actually came from my clients because they were like, but you see what we can't see because, for me, when they're talking about everything, their value is just so obvious, but they just don't see it because there's so much else around that. Plus, what makes them valuable is tied up in all the mistakes they've made, all the times they felt really vulnerable and not enough. And so all of these things cloud that. So yeah, someone else can kind of break through and make it a bit more evident. Yeah. The other thing you mentioned, your last one, I'd like to dive into that about being easy, because as you said, it's something that a lot of people miss. And I see this in business as well, that the number one driver of sales is ease. If you're easy and convenient, people will buy you. It's why we spend more for a product in a box at Christmas because it's easy to wrap. And we have so many things to wrap. So anything put in a box, you can see the price goes up because convenience sells. So, what does that look like for a speaker to be easy?
Well, let me give you a few examples. So from my experience as a booker, being, an agent in a bureau, I need to be able to find you very quickly and very easily. And sometimes people's online presence is a bit poor, or they will have a name that they're known for, but their social media and their contact details are in a different name. So, if you're going to be doctor somebody on LinkedIn, be doctor somebody, and if you're Charles, don't be Charlie somewhere else. That consistency, so I can find you. And give me some contact details on your website. Most bookers, when they're trying to get in touch with you, they want to know your fee and your availability very quickly. If I haven't got a number where I can text you or phone you or a direct email or somebody that I know is going to respond, I'll go on to the next one because there are a lot of speakers about. And unless I'm looking for you specifically and I've been asked for you specifically, I'll move on to somebody else. So it's that finding you and connecting with you and getting a response with you is the very first starting point. If you fall at that hurdle, the rest doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with business. I remember trying to order some wine once, and I could see the bottles of wine, and I could see that they had a little shopping cart at the top. So you could order online, but where that order now button was, it was completely missing. And so, I wasn't going to hunt around. I was just going to go somewhere else that made it easy. But yeah, as I say, it's so powerful, but so easy to miss that one. Yeah.
Phone number on the website is easy to miss. And some people say, well, I don't want to put my mobile number. You don't have to put your mobile number. I've got a VoIP number that I've got on my website. So if somebody calls and leaves a message, and it's got my voice, by the way, saying it's that they've reached the right number, that it's Maria Franzoni, because I hate it when you phone somebody and they just saying, oh, you have reached 07, blah, 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 blah. And you think, have I dialed the right number? I put it down, I redial. Make it easy for me. Tell me I've reached the right number. But if they leave a message, it comes straight to my email and I will then listen to it immediately. And the reason I filter is I get a lot of sales calls, which I imagine most people do if they put a number on. And so if it's a sales call, there's no message, 1 second, don't even need to listen to it. But if I see it's something that's 10 seconds or so, right, I'm going to listen because actually there's a human at the end of that. So I can respond very fast, but I'm also filtering and not getting abusive calls or sales calls by not having my mobile number on there.
That's a great tip. So I want to, obviously, the name of this show is the Value Whispering podcast. And so I want to look at this amplifier that you said was value. In what ways can we add value as a speaker? Is it just the speech itself, or is there anything else that we need to add in?
I think you can do an awful lot more. So we talked about this before the podcast. We talked about, that I don't consider myself a speaker, and you, after 7 books, don't consider yourself an author. I think speakers should not consider themselves speakers. They should consider themselves as problem solvers or solution providers. And I know that sounds, a horrible way of putting it, but if you don't consider yourself as a speaker, but that somebody who's longer term with a client, you should be able to deliver your expertise in more than just that speech. You should be able to support that client in more than that. And that's become more and more important since COVID, as we know, because of course, if that method of you delivering your outcome collapses again, your business collapses again. So you don't want to build your entire business around a speech. You want to have other ways. So if you think about it that way, your value is not just that speech. Your value is in, well, what can I do before to make sure that when I do speak, I'm adding as much value as possible and I'm extending, it's part of the conversation, part of the journey. And what can I do after so that when people come away from that speech, it's not all forgotten because we forget so much so quickly. So how do we embed that and ensure that people carry on? So part of the value is not seeing it as a one-off relationship, but seeing it as a longer term relationship. And then the speech itself is just being really clear, what's the outcome of listening to the speech? And obviously the outcome from one speech is not going to be the same as doing anything longer term, but you are going to want to do one of three things with your speech. You're going to want either people to be thinking differently about the topic. You may want them to feel differently. In other words, you might want them to feel inspired or motivated or be provoked or curious. Or you want them to go and do something practical and you might want to give them an action or activity. So, think, feel, act is sort of the rule of thumb from the speech. And you should be saying that in your descriptions of your topics. The takeaway is this is going to be this one thing or these three things, whatever it happens to be, because that's important for a booker to have that understanding of what's the value of bringing you in to speak.
Yeah. And you mentioned that there are other things other than just the talk. Have you seen anyone doing anything think, oh, that was really genius?
Lots and lots and lots. There's so many amazing things. And actually, once you start to think that way, the creativity grows. So something we did in COVID, as an example, sorry, I keep taking us back to that horrible time, but there was so much learning from, whenever you're in a crisis situation, you learn and you think, why weren't we doing this before? So I had a speaker who was not able to travel because he was highly at risk, but his topic was incredibly relevant, and people were coming and wanting him to help them with their businesses. He didn't want to particularly do Zoom sessions because, again, it sort of takes a lot of time and a lot of energy out of him, and he wasn't able to do that. So what we did is we recorded one speech, one session, and it wasn't tailored to a particular client. It was fairly general. That speech got sold 40 times over the COVID period to different clients and different organizations who all got value out of it. Some put them on a big screen because they were getting together at that time. Other people put it on their intranet. Other people shared it. But he made it clear that he was going to sell that on after he was booked. So he didn't make that video until the first client booked him to do it. That first client paid for the studio, paid for the recording, paid for the video creation, and then he could sell it on and on again and again and again at a lower price than him appearing. And I thought afterwards, why weren't we doing that anyway as a lower option price point for people who couldn't afford to have the speaker come in? So that's something that I recommend people do anyway.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. And I know a lot of people, particularly in the online business space, have things like webinars that they give on a regular basis. But yeah, how could you sell that as a product in itself? Yeah, that's really interesting. As you say, an interesting way to think of things differently beyond the speech. What else could you do to use that to add value to that concept and make it more available to more people? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when I work with the clients, I encourage them to create a portfolio of products and services. And it's something that I'm often learning from other people as well, other ideas. And of course, we have books, and a book in itself is a way of embedding that learning and continuing the conversation and giving people more value because, it's going to take you 14 hours to read some books. Mine's not that long, so it probably wouldn't take that long. I'll have to work it out. But, a book like Sapiens or something like that must take you about 14 hours to read. But there's huge value. So you're never going to deliver that in a 45-minute speech. So you've then got all of that continued content and learning is a great way. And speakers, I always encourage them if they have a book to sell it in as part of their speech. So they're leaving people with something that they can carry on with. That's another value add.
Yeah, I've done that a few times with my first book, A Shy Girl's Guide to Networking. When I was speaking about networking, I offered them a reduced price to buy copies of the book for everybody, and everyone in the audience loved it. And then I could stay and I could sign the books and have a conversation with people. So it was not just the value add of the book, but then, having that personalized and having that access to me as well. Yeah, it was wonderful. So I think it's just a really nice package. Yeah. So this may be obvious, but when somebody becomes more bookable, obviously they're going to get more bookings, and the income and everything that comes from that. But is there any other benefit to becoming more bookable?
I think a lot of the legwork that you have to do to get booked in the first place you don't need to do that anymore because people are coming to you. Once you're, being known for that one thing and being that go-to person. So before we had ever heard of him, we didn't know that Simon Sinek and Start With Why was someone to go to on the topic of purpose. He doesn't need to advertise himself now. Everybody knows if you're thinking about Start With Why and you've got the budget, you'd go. Gary Vaynerchuk, another one, if you're thinking about social media and advice on that, and particularly getting people's attention. So once you're known, you don't have to advertise yourself, do the selling piece. People will be coming to you. But the other piece is, and coming back to what we first started with, once you're known, you can talk about anything you like. And you've made it when someone comes to you and says, Melitta, I'd love to book you to speak. You choose what you talk about. Then okay, they know me and because they trust you and they know you're an expert. And you would do that, if you were inviting somebody like Oprah Winfrey, you're not going to say to Oprah, you have to talk about, they say, Oprah, I don't care what you talk about. I'm just thrilled you're going to be on the stage, right? That's the really beautiful benefit of it, that you can talk about whatever you like. They just want you in the room.
Yeah. So it just opens all of those doors. And And I guess that's the point when we're saying, get known for that one thing, open the doors, and you start to explore the opportunities on the other side, that this is then those opportunities presenting themselves in multiple forms. Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. Maria, I don't want to dive in too much more because I want people to read this book because it is brilliant. And it takes, I would say, roughly about 2 hours. I read it over lunch with some cocktails
Fantastic.
and then my journey home from the speaker summit. And it was just such a engaging read because it's so well written. It's very simple. It's broken everything down, but I think you get more value from really going through it step by step. So I want everyone to go ahead and read it. It's the Bookability Formula. But before we wrap up, I was just curious if there's anything else you feel that we haven't touched on that the listeners would need to know to start taking that next step and leveling up their speaker journey.
I think we probably touched on the main point that, that relevant to that paying market. So really clear on who it is that you help and the problems that you solve, because without that, everything is so much harder. And we talked about making it easy. So I think one more thing, which is really important, and it's the one that a lot of people say, oh, really? Do I have to? And that's consistency. You have to keep showing up. And that I get a lot of resistance to that. But if people don't know you, if you're not consistently showing up, if you're not visible, if you're not, unfortunately, if you're not making a bit of a noise, you're no longer top of mind. So the consistency of having a way of showing up in front of the people who are likely to be interested in your content, whether you're getting any response or not. And I'm talking about social media here. If you're not doing outreach, so you're either going to be doing outreach or you're going to be doing social media. I'd rather you did both. But sometimes it's a losing battle because no, I can't do this, I can't do that. But if you're doing outreach and showing up, then of course that's sales and marketing. Sales and marketing, Melitta, is what's required.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one thing that people forget with the speaker business. It is a business. And as for any business, you have to be marketing yourself all the while. We had Sly Ashe on the show more than a year ago now. He's a speaker, but he was like, yeah, there's that moment of dread where you realize, oh, you mean I have to do what you did to get me as a client to get my clients? We always wish it would be easier and it would be wonderful, but yeah, we need to put in that time. But it just takes a simple process and a system, and once you get that going for you, it's not so difficult. But as you say, something that's so important not to miss.
Absolutely. And you're right. If you've got a system and process and you're not selling, it's you're informing, you're just letting people know you're sharing your content, you're sharing your value so that they realize actually this is relevant to me.
Yeah, exactly. Maria, thank you so much. So if people want to, obviously we're going to put the link to the book in the show notes, but if they want to learn more about you, where's the best place for them to go to?
I mentioned LinkedIn, and I think it was Porter Gale, who was a VP of marketing at Virgin, said that our network is our net worth. And so for me and for everybody, we should be networking and growing that network. And I know you're passionate about this because you wrote an entire book about it. So let's connect on LinkedIn. I'm Maria Franzoni on LinkedIn, and let's grow each other's net worth.
I love that. Thank you so much, Maria.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have enjoyed this conversation with Maria Franzoni and are coming away with a clearer idea of exactly what it takes to become a truly memorable and bookable speaker, and perhaps feeling inspired to take that next step in your own speaker journey. If you have enjoyed this discussion, I'd love to know what's resonated most with you. Come and let me know on LinkedIn. You'll find me there at Melitta. That's Melitta with 2 T's. And if you know of another business owner who dreams of getting on more stages or deserves to be there, then do share this episode with them. It could be exactly what they need to hear. And remember, to help you turn today's wisdom into practical actions you can apply in your business to help you overcome your challenges and grow, head over to the show notes page at melittacampbell.com/podcast. Click on Maria's episode and my AI twin Valora is waiting there with 3 quick questions you can answer that will help her apply the Bookability Formula to your business and speaking career. Meantime, I'm Melitta Campbell, your business coach and value whisperer, and I look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday. Bye.